Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go! In this episode of the podcast, I talk with Steve, who shares his story of growing up surrounded by alcohol. Steve recounts his childhood in the 70s and 80s in Michigan, where drinking was a cultural norm, and how his environment shaped his early relationship with alcohol. He discusses his high school years, during which his house became a hub for parties. Steve explains how his seemingly casual drinking habit evolved into a daily routine and a coping mechanism for other stress in his life and also the pressures. He details his journey through the world of craft beer, the financial and health toll it took on him, and the turning point that led him to pursue sobriety. And this is Steve's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. We'll get to Steve's story shortly. I want to share with you this incredible creation that my wife and I collaborated on. This cool painting. It's a print that we're selling now, but it started out as a painting. It's got Sober Motivation stuff in it. It has the Let's Go in it. It has a dry bar in it. And it's really, really cool. It's obviously hard for me to explain a picture in this print here on the podcast, but at the time of releasing this episode, there's 10 more available. I'll drop the link to check them out down in the show notes below, but there's a few, I guess you could call them hidden messages about the Sober Motivation. There's the Batman logo with Sober Motivation in it too, and that kind of brings me back to the rehab I went to. We were called the quote-unquote Bat Clan. There's the Let's Go in there, and the whole idea of it is like a Sober Motivation HQ, headquarters. And it's been cool collaborating with her on this and helping support her artwork. She's extremely talented, so I'll drop the link down below. If you want to check one out, want to pick one up, we'll be shipping them out next week. So let's get to Steve's story right now. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Steve with us. Steve, how are you?
I'm great, Brad. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well, dude. I'm glad to get connected with you, have you share your story here on the podcast. So what was it like for you growing up?
Well, I always like to say I was raised by wolves. And I mean that literally and figuratively, I think. Both my parents, they were party people. You know, my dad was actually a very educated aerospace engineer. But, you know, back in the day, growing up in Michigan in the 70s, essentially, I mean, I think of the 80s as my decade, but, you know, I was a little kid in the 70s and early 80s. It was everywhere, drinking. My parents partied with aunts and uncles and friends. And, you know, it just felt like that was part of the culture. That was what adults did. Lots of going out, lots of late nights, lots of people coming over for, you know, card night, playing cards and drinking. And the kids, you know, we kind of were meant to be, you know, scarce. We'd all go play somewhere and stuff, but it was always around. And then I remember my father bringing me fairly regularly to like pool halls, and I was fascinated, you know, by it. He was exceptionally good at billiards, at shooting pool. So he'd go out and drink and smoke, and I'd sit on a bar stool quietly off to the side and look at this cast of characters that, you know, was a bunch of oddballs that he hung out with and spent time with. And they were funny and goofy and scary all at the same time. I feel that was really sort of ingrained in me. I mean, I remember when Star Wars came out and the cantina scene, you know, the famous bar scene with all these different characters from all over the galaxy. I was 10 years old when that came out, but I knew I wanted to go to that bar. I wanted to be in that cantina. Yeah. I just, that was my favorite part of the whole movie, was all these guys getting together, having a drink and, you know, talking shop, you know. So I found it appealing at a young age. But I remember some scary stuff. I remember my dad getting, you know, super inebriated and coming home, and, you know, there wasn't any violence, but there was arguments. I remember my mom getting in a horrible car accident, and my parents sort of trying to explain it away, to me to some extent, that, oh, your mom just had an accident, and she was on the couch for weeks just all beat to hell, but it was a result of alcohol consumption, and she was kind of lucky to be alive. And then I got little tricklings of stories of, my mom almost ODing and stuff, because she not only was a drinker, she was using, like pharmaceutical drugs and, whatever was available.
Yeah.
Later on, me and my cousins, my brother, when the parents would go out, we'd sneak into the liquor cabinets and try things, just out of curiosity. It felt like being an adult. So, none of that seemed out of the norm growing up in outside of Detroit, up in Michigan. It didn't seem like we were really doing anything all that different than most young kids.
Yeah. Looking back now, I mean, what impact do you think that had on you of kind of seeing it everywhere, kind of being normalized to, in just being a part of life and the culture? Looking back,
It just felt normal, I think, at that time. My parents ended up divorcing when I was about 9 years old. And I think when you're that young, you can roll with it. I had an older brother, 5 years older than me, that all of a sudden my mom quickly remarried, and we had some stepbrothers and a couple stepsisters, and they were closer to his age. So he couldn't deal with it, and he moved with my grandparents and sort of finished his school years with them, where I stuck around. And then eventually my step siblings, moved on also. And so I was sort of like a what they call a latchkey kid. I was home alone a lot. They'd leave food, I'd fend for myself, and they'd, either be at work or go on vacations, and I'd beg them to leave me behind. This was later in life, I mean, but I think I remember staying home alone on, family vacations as young as 14.
uh-huh.
So I was trusted. But then in the high school days, my house was the house for the parties. Everybody came over because Steve's parents are, they're away on vacation. And it got quite raucous, I mean, it was a small town in Michigan. That's what young people did on Friday, Saturday night, especially once you got to driving age and stuff like that. This beard that you and I are both rocking, I could grow when I was like in 11th grade, so I had no problem buying alcohol for like everybody. And what a great way to, meet girls. Hey, can you go buy me some wine coolers? So,
Yeah.
in fact, I got a DUI when I was 16 years old. And I left my own party to drive a girl home. And I really wasn't heavily intoxicated, but I was goofing around, and the roads were empty. So I just jokingly started driving down the other side of the road, and all of a sudden I get pulled over, and we both got taken to the local police station, and I think her parents had to come get her, and then I had a friend of my parents come get me, and I ended up pretty unscathed. At that time I lost my license for about a month, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. So I just chalked it up as, shit, stuff happens.
Yeah. And I know we chatted too before, is that, kind of the way I think you put it too, is that this really didn't become like a quote unquote problem until later in life. So as you're kind of going through all of this, is, I think, a very relatable story of this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
what people are doing, and this is the way we're doing it. I mean, it's not getting too out of hand. Sometimes it does a little bit. And then where do you kind of go after high school?
Well, as soon as I got out of high school, I wanted to get out of that little town. And I had a friend that years prior had moved to Northern California with his mom. So I really at that time wasn't terribly interested in like higher education yet. So I just hopped on a Greyhound bus with all my shit and went to Napa, California. and lived with my buddy. And, we did odd jobs. We thought we would potentially start a band. We were big into music. I didn't have realistic goals. It was sort of like, oh, you go out to California and you're special, you'll get noticed. Well, nobody was really banging on my door. I did end up being an extra on a TV show. That was about as far as I got. But
What was that? What was that
the,
all about?
the extra on the show was Falcon Crest, which
Okay.
was a spin-off of the famous show Dynasty back in the day.
Oh, cool.
It Falcon Crest was a winery, so they did a lot of filming around the Napa Valley. So I ended up sort of in the background on a couple episodes.
Okay.
So a very, very brief amount of fame there. But I had no parental guidance. I moved out there. I graduated young at 17 years old, and my buddy and I just went to a ton of different concerts in San Francisco. We were going to see U2 and the Simple Minds and the Smiths and the Cure, and we drank a lot. We partied a lot. We worked just enough to, have fun and do things. So it was a pretty, again, normal sort of life at that time. I got introduced to like better beer. I was working at like this deli restaurant, and um, me and my friend were both pretty mature for our age. So we seemed to be able to get the trust of adults. So at the end of every shift, my boss and his buddy, he'd come in and we'd shut things down. My friend would come over and they'd let us pick one, beer out of the cooler. And at this time, at this place, they had like an exceptional selection of, beer from around the world and beer made, locally in the San Francisco Bay Area. And, so we would just generally grab like something in the biggest bottle we could find, and it'd be like out of, Germany or something like that. And so we thought we were kind of cool by drinking, fancy beer at that time, but that didn't really stick. I didn't really get deep into drinking till later, and
Mm,
but that was like a little sampling of it, so to speak.
yeah.
I ended up meeting a girl, and I'm going to jump ahead here,
Yeah.
and get married fairly young. I was about 20, 21, and I got married pretty
Oh, wow.
quickly out west. And we lived in Napa for a while. She was a California girl. And then I had family here in Florida where I'm at now. And so we wanted to be where there wasn't snow and it wasn't as expensive, which California really pricey. So we decided to move to Florida and had a good life. And I ended up going back to school and getting into the medical field. And she was a business professional, and it was a good life. I mean, we'd go out to dinner, and oftentimes I'd just order iced tea. I didn't really drink more than very little moderation. And as you and I talked prior, it didn't take much for me to get a real bad hangover. So those occasional getting invited to a Super Bowl party or a wedding, I would just get crushed and it would knock me out of commission for months. I just hated how I felt so bad. It was one of those I'll never drink again and that kind of stuff. And then I had a patient, I do physical therapy rehabilitation, and I had a patient that was big into beer. I mean, he traveled to Belgium, and I was boggled by that. I'm like, you mean you're going across the planet to just to drink beer? And he's like, oh yeah, it's like this is like beer mecca. I'm a curious person. I found it fascinating. And then he told me about some local places that had a beer selection. So I was kind of intrigued by it, and I started to dip my toes into that. And it started innocently enough. I'd get a raspberry wheat beer and flavored, Sam Adams cherry beer and some of these things. And I grew kind of acquired this taste for it. And then it sort of progressed from there, where I was drinking more and more craft beer, but it wasn't really a problem, if you will. But
Mm,
it was definitely forming itself as a hobby for me, Brad. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely was, if I wasn't going to a brewery, which came later, the breweries, but there was always good bars that had nice selections. There was always that one liquor store that had, stuff from around the world, and you could choose stuff that, was good. It was high quality. So it was kind of a beer snob, essentially,
Yeah.
and it, innocently enough, was sort of started as a hobby, until it got out of hand.
Yeah. Which it's interesting you bring that up too, right? Because I think the craft beers introduce like beer drinkers to that world that maybe the tequila drinkers, the whiskey, and maybe some of the wine people were kind of already like, I've heard it before, like a wine connoisseur, but actually drinking too much. And then the craft beers like kind of opened it up to where you try different things, and it could be a hobby of sorts, right? And then the check out the different breweries as that came further down the line. How old are you, or like what year is this that you kind of start to lean into them?
Probably mid 30s, 30 to mid 30s when I started, that started to pop up on my radar, and then, I'm still kind of happily married at that time, but, it started to kind of progress. And then for whatever reason, maybe the drinking, I don't know, I started having problems in my marriage.
Mm,
And it got to a point where I'd leave work and I'd quickly stop at a pub and bang back like two beers as quickly as possible. So you're drinking beers that are sometimes 10% alcohol,
mm,
heavy hitters,
yeah.
and you're banging them back like you just mowed the lawn. So just to go home to then cope with some marital problems.
Mm,
So you drink two there quick, go home, and then quickly crack one open at home so you would, not have the noticeable scent of alcohol on you.
mm,
And so that was kind of my MO for a while. And then that just progressed where my now ex wife and I were having, some issues. And we ultimately separated for a couple of years. And I sort of lived my life like that marriage was over. I was kind of living like a bachelor, and I didn't have any filters or restrictions. I was, working and got my job done, but soon as work was over, I was heading to the pub. And then shortly after, the brewery thing just started popping up everywhere. The craft beer thing, everybody,
yeah.
started getting breweries to the point where even I, who loved them, thought, well, this isn't sustainable. We've got like five in this town. How is this
Yeah.
realistic? But they all brought something different to the table, and people were into it. They were really into it, and they're still seemingly getting into it. You've got kind of people that are newer to that,
Hmm.
and I mentioned to you earlier that the it's no longer going to a seedy bar. You talk to your, if you're a young woman with a child and a baby, and you tell your mom on the phone or your grandmother on the phone, oh, we're going to the brewery. What do you mean you're going to the brewery? Well, it's not like a seedy bar, Mom. They do yoga and they do Pilates and they have a run club, and the kids are welcome and dogs are welcome. So here's this family friendly, welcoming environment. Yet at the root core of it all, alcohol is being served and encouraged to consume.
Mm, yeah.
So I was kind of in that world, I anytime I traveled, I'd look up breweries in that town, and I'd quickly, oh, hey, did you hear about that new IPA, that they've got, or that new stout? And I'd call my brother, we got to go check this out. So it was an every single day thing for me.
Mm,
And but I still didn't quite view it like as a problem because I wasn't getting in any trouble.
yeah.
Although my marriage had seemingly ended, I wasn't getting in any trouble. It was something I enjoyed, and I still was framing it as this hobby.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding, my ex-wife and I took some marriage counseling and tried to get back together, and that lasted a year or two, and then it still wasn't there. It wasn't working, so we ended up getting divorced. And I moved about an hour out of the town I'm in to up to St. Pete, Florida, which is a very vibrant, hip town with lots of breweries, lots of bars, lots of restaurants, very artsy, kind of cool.
Mm,
And I loved it. It was my first taste at sort of city living. I could leave work, go up there, park my car, and have no need to get back in my car until Monday morning when I had to drive back into town for work.
mm,
And it was everywhere. And again, I had no interest in quitting. It was still the occasional hangover, and I got better at functioning with a hangover.
mm,
But I'll tell you, it got to a point where my anxiety was so ramped up
mm,
that, I'd stand in the shower in the morning and think, wow, is this the day that I kill somebody? Or is this the day I get a DUI and really mess up my life? But, come 4 or 5 o'clock, I was heading right back to the pub or the brewery.
yeah. You
So,
you mentioned
yeah,
the thing earlier when we were chatting is that it's kind of like maybe the modern day pool hall. Like, because to bring your family and everything, I'm thinking of the one pool hall we have where I live. Like, it's in a basement under this old mall. It's probably not going to be the place where everybody hangs out like maybe before, but now it's like the modern place where you can bring everybody gather with kind of beer at the center
yeah.
of things. Yeah, do you ever look back? Because I'm really intrigued here how, for the longest time anyway, for some time there, you're able to, have a bad hangover, take a couple months off, and then, when you were with your wife, go out for dinner and get iced tea or whatever,
Hmm.
and then you kind of get into the beer thing. And it's a lot of people's story, I think, right? Is like it's slow. It's a slow burn for some to where,
Yeah.
one day it's like this, and maybe 5 years later it's completely different. Do you have any idea or put a finger on anything of like what that looked like at the time, or what was kind of going on there to keep you going in that direction?
The thing with the craft beer is it was never about getting drunk or even the buzz per se. I absolutely love the taste of a really hoppy IPA, and these breweries just kept upping their game and making these things more and more desirable. And again, I think my way to justify it was this is sort of a hobby.
Yeah.
And I would look for people at work to join me. Oh, I want to go work out. And I'm like, work out? Screw that. Let's go get a beer. Come on. But then, yeah, I started realizing that I was medicating myself when the marital problems occurred. And I started, going and pounding a couple before I went home. I'm not, a real young guy. So I've got different health issues that come with that. I've got really horrible tinnitus in both ears. The ringing in the ears is constant in my life. So after a stressful day at work and those other aches and pains, some of it self inflicted and, what have you, I would go to the pub or the brewery.
Mm,
Once I got that second one in me, all that crap would melt away.
mm,
And then there was also the element of escapism. I look at drinking alcohol as like virtual reality. You remember I went out to California thinking I might become something. I wanted to be America's version of, Bono from U2. I wanted to be on the front of the stage with 100,000 people, commanding their attention. And I didn't really put a lot into play to achieve those goals, but it was something I fantasized about to the point where you could put on that music at home and open up a couple beers and sort of become Sting for an hour. You know what I mean? You could sort of fantasize that that's you. And I don't know, it sounds kind of silly, but it was definitely that virtual reality escapism that the mundane nature of my life, things not working out necessarily like I would have loved them to, that all tied together. So the alcohol definitely served more of a purpose than just the taste.
Mm,
It starts with me choosing, oh, I bet that's good. Let me try that. Oh, yeah, that's good. I'm going to drink that. And then by the third one, it wouldn't matter what the hell you were drinking as long as there was alcohol in it.
yeah.
And then you better be careful because it gets away from you and you get behind the wheel. And I'm sure I many, many times was beyond the legal limit out on the road.
Yeah.
And knock on wood, never got in any trouble and never had, any accidents or anything like that. But
Mm,
that's just dumb luck. Yeah.
yeah. I was talking with a friend the other day too about alcohol too. And it's just so many, there's potential for so many things to go sideways when alcohol is involved. I was like, hey, the second I quit drinking, of course, my life still happens and there's all these moving parts. But when I eliminated that aspect of things, of like not acting as who I am, like I became somebody else, not every time, but a lot of
Yeah.
the times I became somebody else, did things or said things that I would never do or never say, that I didn't believe, that
Yeah.
weren't aligned with my values.
Right.
And because he was asking, like, what do you think? This is someone who's drinking, and for him, whatever. I mean, that's up to him. But I was just like, because I was telling him, I'm like, all this kind of stuff that you're experiencing, like, if you don't drink, believe it or not, like, goes away. That stuff,
Yeah.
you don't really deal with that. And so I think that's it's kind of like one of the massive benefits, obviously, of the whole thing. So
Yeah.
to kind of catch up to where you're at here, I think, is that you're kind of going through this cycle. I mean, this is a hobby, but you're also identifying too that it's checking other boxes in your life of things, and maybe it's providing a purpose or something to plug into community. I think too, right? I think of these
Oh my
breweries and
God.
everything. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I know there's this one in town, and I'm not saying it's a good idea to go to all these places, but this one place has good pizza, so I go there get the pizza. But they have mugs, and on the wall it's full of mugs. And then I
Right.
think I think each guy comes in
Right.
and he gets like his
His
own mug with
own his own mug. Yeah.
his name on it. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, right? But I
Yeah.
think that's sort of the sense of
Yeah.
belonging and sense of community, and stuff to kind of
Yeah.
draw you in and keep you around. So,
Yeah. Brad,
yep,
my picture was literally on the wall next to where I sat at the pub here in this town. There was a
VIP.
picture of me and my dog, and I started taking her the moment I got her. She would sit on the bar stool next to me, put her chin on the bar stool, and I would jokingly say that she's my designated driver. But our picture
Uh,
was right there on the wall. And so I was definitely the norm from Cheers at that particular pub for years. I mean, that was my comfort zone. I mean, I said many times in my life, I'm never happier than when I'm on a bar stool. I'm
yeah.
sitting on a bar stool talking to you right now, Brad.
Did they give
But
you the bar stool when you
no,
retired, man, for
and
drinking?
then the that particular bar became a brewery. It's a craft brewery now, and that was part of the downfall. My picture came down. I wasn't special so much anymore. These owners and these bartenders, they make you feel welcome and special. It was a Superman's fortress of solitude. It was a escape from all the the world often is shitty and it's like shark infested waters. The pub was an oasis.
Yeah.
The brewery was an oasis, and there was multiple to choose from. And then if you traveled, I'd do the same thing. I love going to Ireland and England and those pubs over there and the history. And what I loved a lot about it was the fact that all ages were welcome. You didn't have just young people. You had young guys and young gals, but you'd also have older folks that they were all intermingling, and it was just part of their culture. And I'm like, man, I want to be here. This is home. This feels right.
Right.
So uh, I I have a lot of other interests, but there's just something about that world.
Mm.
So there's times that I drank alone here at my house, and I'd have decent quality beer, or sometimes make a bourbon or what have you, wine with dinner. But
Mm.
I was spending on average about $700 a month just on beer, and
Wow.
I'm like,
At the
man,
brewery.
I'm like, yeah, and then occasional six pack here in the house, but I'm like, man, I could really be driving a nice car, you
Yeah.
know? So,
So
you know,
yeah, so I'm just curious too, like where do things turn around for you, and how do you come to the conclusion too? Like how do you land at, like, I'm just going to air quote it because I don't know if it's the exact way that you frame it up, but like, this is a problem in my life.
yeah.
What lands you
Well,
there?
yeah, I knew it was a problem off and on for quite some time, well before quitting. But I still was adamant that no, I'm not giving it up. I'm, what's the point? Why would I? So I would do the stupid thing that many of us have done, where you like quit for 2 months, 3 months to prove that you're not an alcoholic. Because we really don't understand that full definition of that. So I'd be like, yeah, I just went 3 months without drinking. I clearly don't have a problem. And then you're on vacation and you have a couple drinks. And then as soon as I got back home, I was right back to daily consumption. I kept trying to make rules to moderate. For every beer I drink, I've got to run a mile tomorrow, and then if it was one, I would do it. But if it was beyond that, I'd be the hell with that. I'll make it up next time. Only on weekends, only when I travel. And I had to have it every day. And people don't understand that still when you tell them that you're sober and well, can't you just have one? No, if I could have just one, it'd be a perfect friggin' world, but I can't just have one,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've worn out my welcome with it. And I had enough anxiety as a child that I don't even know where that stemmed from. And then you often drink because that sort of melts it away for that hour or two, but then everything's amplified. I mean, I was a wreck, I was shaky, and it was amazing. I was able to pull it together and do my job. I mean, I hung my hat on the fact that I was just always a real person. I didn't try to pretend that I was something I wasn't. So I think most of the patients that I've dealt with have always appreciated my candor and my honesty. I'm the same guy here as I am in that pub, and I think that worked for a lot of people. Not everybody, but it worked for a lot of people. So I was that guy. But the problem also became physical. I blew up to 400 pounds because I was drinking on average 1,000 calories a day. These IPAs are like 300 calories a pop.
Wow.
So you have three of them a night on average, which I was easily exceeding that. I would have sometimes only one, but I had 10 on Sunday, or as football, or as Saturday, I'd go and have seven.
Mm.
So, it's Tuesday, it's bingo night at the brewery. So let's go there. And it happened to be BOGO. So you had four or six. So I was, and then when you drink that much, you make horrible food choices.
Mm.
It's well, let's stop at Taco Bell. I've got to get something in my system to soak up all this alcohol. So one thing led to another. I blew up to 400 pounds. So
Yeah.
then, like an idiot, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to quit drinking. I'm just going to stop eating. So
Yeah.
I started fasting, which later in my life became beneficial, but I was fasting, but still drinking.
Mm.
Holy crap, was that a problem?
What's that like? What's that like?
I did the goofiest shit. I became like a sleepwalker. I scared the hell out of my fiance. I mean, there was one time that I'm just in the middle of the night getting up and trying to move a dresser, and she's like
Oof.
crying, what are you doing? And I'm just hell bent on moving a dresser at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I was asleep. I was
Wow.
just on this autopilot. It was so bizarre because I had all this alcohol in me, but I wasn't eating for like days. And I'm like, oh, I figured this out. I can still drink, but I'm going to lose weight because I'm not going to eat.
Wow.
Dumb. Really dumb. And then, one time I got up and didn't go to the bathroom. And in my dream, I was at the bathroom. So I'm peeing in the corner of the room. And I had a flashback of when my dad came home once and did that. And I'm like,
Mm.
what the hell is going on? What have I become? You
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
it finally just dawned on me when again, up to 400 pounds, really struggling, just getting up my stairs. I thought to myself, I said, you know what? You're going to die in your sleep one of these nights at
Mm.
this rate that you're going sooner than later, and nobody's going to be surprised. Nobody's going to be shocked. They're going to be like, well, God, he was 400 pounds. He drank like an animal. He had angst and anxiety and anger. So it was then and there that I said, I've got to just leave it behind. And, I don't recommend this, but, we as humans, I think we like to make things sort of monumental. We like to be able to celebrate things. We like things in time lines and time periods, and we like to mark our calendar. So I decided on New Year's Eve on 2022 that those would be my last beers.
Mm.
And I was pretty adamant that I want this now. It's not a matter of my ex-wife wanting it for me. It's not a matter of my fiance, who I lived with and love and wanted me to end it. I made the decision. It's time. And I'm
Mm.
a believer that when it comes to quitting alcohol, it really just has to be what you want to do. You can't do it for legalities and be made to go to AA. You can't do it for other people. You've got to just truly want to do it.
Yeah.
All the ultimatums in the world don't matter. It's just got to be your choice. So I went to a couple buddies' house. I brought like 4 or 5 different IPAs. I don't know if I even told those guys, and they weren't real big drinkers. One of them wasn't a drinker at all. The other one, a little bit here and there. But I knew in my mind this is going to be it. And the reason I was with them on New Year's Eve, my fiance is a nurse. She works a lot. She happened to be working that night. I wasn't going to see her, so I just went and hanged out with them. And then the next day, I hit the ground running. I started focusing on my gut health. I set some real rules and parameters when it came to sleep and my sleep
Mm.
hygiene.
Mm.
I started studying the ancient Greek philosophy of Stoicism,
Mm.
which has really extremely helped kind of guide my daily life and this problem of alcoholism.
Yeah.
So I just put a plan together and started climbing up and down the stairs, and within 8 months I lost 100 pounds. I was
Wow.
sleeping like I'd never slept in my life. Nothing seemed to phase me. Man, I could get cut off in traffic and just not give a shit. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and worse things too, not just the simple little stuff like that. Other
Yeah.
things that would have really set me off in life
Mm.
didn't phase me, and that's still kind of where I'm at. I mean, I just I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders with the sort of the system I've put in place. And but I mean, you can hear from my voice. I look at some of that as envious. I was recently, just real quick, I was my fiance and our little dog. We drove up to Charlotte, North Carolina. It's about 10 hours from where I am, and on the way back, we'd never been to Savannah, Georgia. So I'm like, well, let's stop in Savannah and just walk around.
Yeah.
We're walking around, and that's sort of like a New Orleans-y kind of drinking town on a little smaller scale. And all of a sudden, we're walking past this bar. Really cool sign out front, really cool little layout. Kind of looks like a dive, but kind of hip. And I walk towards the door, and it's open, and I can smell the beer, but not in a bad way. It's not like stale. It smelled like a brewery kind of in a good way. And I just stopped and looked in, and I remember saying out loud, Brad, I remember saying, wow, that looks like heaven. So all of a sudden I took this gut punch of holy shit. Oh my God. Let's just keep walking. Let's keep walking. We got to get the dog to the car before she overheats. Let's get moving. But man, that stuck with me for a while.
Yeah.
How that really, I'm like, any other time I would have just said, all right, we're going in here and we'll get a hotel room tonight, and we're gonna hang out here.
Yeah.
So it's still there, but I don't see me ever turning back. It's 2.5 years now, over 2.5 years of sobriety now.
Yeah.
And with one caveat, and maybe you can make me feel better about this. About 3 weeks ago, I had a patient show up at work, and it was his last visit. and he wanted to bring something in for everybody, and it was mostly me he worked with. So he hands me this lovely, what looks like a bunt cake from this really gourmet bakery around the corner. And it's got the white frosting on top of it, and he's just, thanks for everything. And I'm like, oh, that's really not necessary, but well, I'm sure it'll get eaten, no worries.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'll have a little piece of it. I want to try it. It's from a good bakery. And I'm assuming this is carrot cake. So I don't know if you know where this is going.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
So I take a bite of this and I instantly feel that mouthfeel of like I just had a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is rum cake. And so I spit out most of that bite. And then I quickly Google, with rum cake, does all the booze get cooked away? And it doesn't necessarily, because they'll cook it with rum and then they'll like drizzle rum on top of this. And then I'm thinking, who the hell brings somebody at work
Rum
a
cake.
rum cake? We all got to work. So I'm going to put an asterisk, I guess, by that one. But I just thought that was
Yeah.
kind of a fun story.
It is. I mean, it is too. And like, even with the mocktails and like the NA space really growing too,
Yeah.
I've had a handful of conversations with people like about, like the bartender accidentally did, whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
I was even served one. I went out with my wife and I was ordering I think it's called Peroni. It's a green thing. And
Hmm.
so I never had it before, but they were like, that's what we have for the NA option. So I was like, okay. And then it came in
Yeah.
like a draft. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I've never seen like NA's not that big to where they're doing drafts. So
Right.
I was like, yeah. I was like, just to make sure we got the order right. Like if you could bring the bottle, that'd be great. Cause I always like want the bottle. I'll pour it
Yeah.
myself or see it. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, she had ordered the other one. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
but
man.
but yeah, I mean the way it was always explained to me, and like I'm not a guru that has all the answers or everybody should listen to me, but it's about the intention behind it. If I intended to drink something knowing where I was headed, but
Right.
I mean, but everybody kind of has their own thing. That's wild. Two
Well,
and a half years, man.
those are the kind of dreams I have. I think everybody has these, drink dreams, and
Mm,
it's usually consuming by accident. It's not
yeah.
conscious. It's sort of like, oh no, I accidentally drank. Well, I guess it's over now. And you wake up very stressed about it. And those
Hmm.
still pop up every couple months.
Yeah. Great job on 2.5+ years, a little bit over that now that we're just crossed over into like August here. But even with sort of the other journey too, I mean, you mentioned you lost 100 pounds there too. Like, I'm only guessing, right? I wasn't there and I don't know all the details, but like health wise, were you struggling too? Heart rate, blood pressure,
Oh
things
yeah,
like that?
yeah. I'm not exaggerating when I say I was gonna probably die in my sleep, and
Yeah.
nobody was gonna be surprised. I'm 58 years old later this month, and I've already outlived my father, family history of a lot of things. I'm the last guy that should be walking around at 4 bills. So,
Yeah.
and I'm still working on always trying to level up when it comes to my health and what have you. I
Yeah.
talk a lot about this on, I have my podcast, Craft
The
Free.
mega.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
gave up craft beer, and it's Craft Free, the weekly sober podcast, and it's only on Spotify. It's only audio, and it's a casual, lighthearted approach to, quitting alcohol and the pitfalls of that. I never told that rum cake story though, but yeah, I mean, it's a labor of love. It's sort of my meetings. I do it every single week, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's a half hour. It's only on Spotify, and I started it last December, I think. So I'm about 36, 37 episodes in,
Wow.
and it's fun. It's a labor of love. You got to come up with a topic and what have you. And I've had people ask me, hey, you want to interview me? And I'm like, no. I said, Brad's the guy. Reach out to Brad. He's good at that. I'm not going to be able to do that. But
That's
yeah,
cool,
so
man.
and it's not just about craft beer. I mean, I talk about everyday life. I talk about, loneliness and other problems and certain things based on stoicism. I used to do when I was drinking. I was doing stand-up comedy, Brad. I can't imagine doing it now without alcohol. I mean, I didn't have to be hammered, but it took a couple to get up on stage. So I interject a lot of humor into the podcast, and like I said, it's sort of a lighthearted approach. I felt there was a niche for it. I definitely try to shine a light on the craft brew industry. I mean, again, I jokingly refer to myself as the Luigi of craft breweries, but I once loved them and now I have a disdain for what they've done. But yeah. So
That's
it's
cool.
fun and it helps. And I know
Yeah.
you got to go, Brad. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to talk to you.
Yes, you as well, Steve. Thank you so much, man. And I'll drop the link if somebody wants to check out the podcast too. And I mean, I think you're right, man. I think this is a very serious subject and a very serious topic, but we have to find a way to have a little bit of fun with everything that
Yeah.
we do, or
Yeah.
it's like, why do it all? That's where I stand
Yeah.
with things. Like, why do, if we can't find a little bit of pleasure and fun and an outlet like that. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
cool. You're bringing that to the table, man.
Yeah. I'm not the guy that's going to give all the science and the statistics. You can find that stuff elsewhere, but I try to keep it real, raw, unfiltered like a hazy IPA.
Yeah. And there's been obviously, I mean, we are at a time here, but there obviously has been challenges too that you've went through. And you mentioned, like maybe people, if they're interested in that, go check out the podcast and hear Steve talk about, some of those things and just
Yeah.
how he's worked
Yeah.
through it. All
Yeah.
right, Steve. Thank you, buddy.
Brad, I appreciate it, buddy. Much love.
Yeah, same to you. Well, there it is. Another incredible story here on the podcast. Thank you to Steve jumping on here and sharing your story with all of us here. I'll drop the podcast information and Instagram for Steve down in the show notes below if you want to connect, if you could relate to any of his journey with craft beer and how, I guess, there's a trapdoor there as well, is what we hear from Steve's journey and experience with it all. So keep rocking, Steve. Thank you as always for listening. And if you haven't left a review on Apple or Spotify, jump over there right now before you do anything else. Leave a 5-star review and I'll see you on the next one.